So Goldie, tell us the numbers you're hearing out of Iran right now.
The number is unconfirmed, but we're hearing of at least 30,000, if not more. It is the single largest massacre of Iranians by the Islamic dictatorship since they took over in 1979.
On Jerusalem Dateline, we are blessed to interview some truly remarkable people shaping events in Israel and in the Middle East. On today's episode, we feature our interview with politician, lawyer, and activist Goldie Ghamari as she speaks about the possible fall of the Islamic Republic, currently controlling her home country of Iran. Goldie Ghamari is an Iranian-born lawyer and former Canadian lawmaker, and as Iran once again erupts in protests and the regime tightens its grip, we turn to her for some insights. Goldie, welcome to Jerusalem Dateline.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for joining us. So first, we want to hear from you what your contacts inside of Iran are saying.
Well, it's difficult to get any news from my contacts directly because the regime has shut down the internet. So I actually haven't heard from my family directly since they shut down the internet last week. But there are some Iranians who have been able to get a hold of friends or family inside. And what they are saying is that the situation is incredibly dire. The amount of casualties is higher than what's even being reported in the media. But what they're saying is right now we don't want to focus on the casualties. What they're saying is we want to focus on the fact that after 47 years, we can see and taste freedom, and we are so close to overthrowing this brutal Islamic dictatorship. There will be time for mourning the murdered Iranians after, but right now they want the world to know that the fight is continuing. Iranians have never been more motivated than ever, and they're not going to stop until they're free.
Do you think this is the breaking point?
Absolutely, 100%. This is the breaking point. It's war. It's war out there. Iranians are unarmed, and the Islamic regime, the Islamic dictatorship, they've now brought in their proxy forces like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and the Hashd-e-Shabis. These are the same terrorist proxy groups that commit acts of terrorism in the Middle East. Of course, October 7 genocidal massacre, all of that was funded by the Islamic Republic. So those same terrorist groups are murdering Iranians as well. So it really is now or never, because what Iranians are saying is that if we do not overthrow the regime, then every single person who has been slaughtered these last few days, it will all have been in vain.
Yeah, and the numbers are staggering, as you say. So President Trump said, of course, that keep protesting, take over the institutions, he said. And then he said, save the names of the killers and the abusers. So at this point, given the death toll and how it's climbing, is this the moment the U.S. military should intervene?
Yes, I believe so. I believe this is the moment that the U.S. military should intervene, because the Islamic dictatorship, they are so vicious, they are so vile. They're not going to go down without a fight, and right now they're going scorched earth. We're seeing images coming out of people with, military-grade machine guns who are just roaming around in the backs of vans, and they're just indiscriminately shooting into crowds of people. Of course, unarmed people. So it's all out war, except one side is armed, the terrorists are armed, and the Iranian people are unarmed.
Wow. Well, I want to bring in our bureau chief, Chris Mitchell, for some additional context. Chris has been serving here in our Jerusalem bureau for 25 years, so he's seen a lot of Iran-Israel relationship and kind of the evolution of Iran. Chris, in your opinion, since the early 2000s when you came, what's different now about what we're seeing coming out of Iran?
Well, Goldie and Joshua, I think one of the main things right now is President Trump's in office. President Obama famously or infamously didn't do much at all during the Green Revolution. Biden during the Mashar Amini protest. So I think that is one of the main differences. And then I guess the scale, and you could confirm this, Goldie, all 31 provinces are involved, millions of Iranians in the streets. And as you were saying, it seems like the desperation is so dire, and they want to make sure this is the time they can overthrow this regime. And Goldie, I wanted to ask you, what can be the consequences of this, if the regime does fall? What would be the consequences, first of all, to the people of Iran?
Well, freedom. We would finally have freedom after 47 years. We would finally be free from these savage Islamic terrorists who have been occupying us for the last 47 years. We can finally have a normal country based on the principles of democracy and secularism, like we were prior to 1979. The other thing as well is that we can finally stop being a sponsor of terror or being occupied by a sponsor of terrorism, right? Because prior to 1979, Iran and Israel were allies. And so we're actually looking forward to rekindling that allyship. That's actually one of our top priorities in the transitional plan for when the regime falls, is to reestablish and normalize relationships with Israel.
Goldie, could you double click on that? I know you were born in Iran. What are some of the misconceptions people have about Iran before 1979 or before the revolution?
So some of the misconceptions people have is that it was an authoritarian dictatorship and like people weren't free, and they like to say bad things about our beloved Shah of Iran, but the reality is those are all lies that have been propagated by the Islamists and the communists in order to justify overthrowing Iran and taking over in 1979, very similar to the propaganda and lies that they put out about Israel. It's the exact same thing. So the communists and Islamists like to paint themselves as the freedom fighters. Meanwhile, of course, we know that these freedom fighters are in fact terrorists. So I would say that that's a big common misconception. Another common misconception is that Iranians are Muslim. We're not. Prior to 1979, perhaps, some people just kind of identified as secular Muslim, but the reality is that today, less than 20% of Iranians identify as Muslim, and this revolution, it's not just about overthrowing the Islamic dictatorship. It's about getting rid of Islam and throwing it out of our country, basically, because we're Iranian, we're not Arab. We have a completely different culture, a completely different civilization. Just like the Jewish civilization, we're indigenous to the land of Iran, and the history of Jews and Iranians goes back thousands of years before Islam was invented.
Yeah, Goldie, one of the things that seems about this revolution is that the people are rallying around Reza Pahlavi. It seems like in the past, some of the opposition groups have been disorganized or not unified. Is this marks this revolution that people are rallying around Pahlavi to come back and at least be a temporary leader in a transition?
Yes, absolutely. So I think that's one of the defining features and defining factors of this revolution is that everyone has rallied around His Royal Highness Reza Pahlavi, the Crown Prince of Iran. He is the only one that we trust to transition Iran from a totalitarian Islamic dictatorship to a functioning secular democracy. And, people in Iran are only chanting his name, Reza Pahlavi. They're showing images of, they're sharing photos where they're holding up images of his face on camera so that people outside can see who they're fighting for. And young people in Iran are saying, we are willing to risk our lives if it means we can return our king back to Iran.
On a personal note, Goldie, if I may, how are you feeling watching what's coming out of your home country and what's being done right now, the abuse of your people? How are you feeling?
It's difficult. It's difficult because we know how brutal the regime is and how brutal it has been. But Iranians, we're very brave. We're very strong. We have, we're an ancient civilization that has survived for thousands of years. And so as difficult as it is, seeing the bravery of Iranians in occupied Iran and how they're just, willing to give up everything for freedom, that gives me energy. But more than that, we have received so much love and support from people around the world people in Israel, people in the United States, people across Europe, South America, like everywhere that I can think of, there are people who are tuning into my live stream, sharing their love, sharing their support, rooting on for the Iranian people. And that gives me a lot of hope, and it's giving all Iranians hope, because now we know that unlike previous times, we're not alone anymore. We're not alone. The whole world is behind us, and the whole world is cheering for us to as we overthrow one of the most evil dictatorships to have ever been created.
Yeah. From your sources, Goldie, what are you hearing about the rise of Christianity inside Iran, even despite all the persecution by the regime?
Well, Christianity is the number one rising religion in occupied Iran. Zoroastrianism is second. So, yeah, a lot of Iranians are converting to Christianity because we're done with Islam. We don't think Islam is a good religion. We're just sick of it. And from my understanding, from a lot of Iranian Christians who have, converted from Islam to Christianity, what they tell me is that Christianity offers love, peace, and hope, whereas Islam is more about hatred and death. So that's why many Iranians are secretly converting to Christianity, although they still have to identify as Muslim, because under Sharia law, apostasy is punishable by death, and many Christian converts have been jailed and executed for leaving Islam.
Yeah. Of course, we sit here in Jerusalem, Goldie, so we're very curious about the relationship between the Jewish people and the Persian people. So why do you think the regime has tried so hard to erase the memory of Cyrus and the Persian people in terms of the relationship with the Jewish people?
Because the Islamic regime is anti-Iranian. The Islamic regime is an occupying force, and they have tried to erase our cultural identity. They have tried to erase our roots. They have basically tried to make us forget about who we are as Iranians. I mean, even the flag of the Islamic Republic, it says Allahu Akbar, which is Arabic. We're Iranian, we speak Persian, and yet, the flag of the occupiers is in Arabic writing. So the reason that they've tried to erase our identity, erase, the memory of Cyrus the Great, is because that's another way for them to try and conquer us. And that's why, as Iranians, we have actually, we're incredibly nationalistic. We have learned about our history even more. And we're not going to let them erase our identity, because that's one of the ways that we're fighting back, is by reclaiming our Iranian identity.
Yeah. One of the stories that we've been covering here for the last couple of years, Goldie, is many banners that have been set up here inside and throughout Israel, celebrating the women that have been protesting against the Iranian regime. Houman Halili is the Iranian American who's been doing that. How would you ask Christians around the world to be praying for the people of Iran right now?
Pray for us, pray for Iranians, but, I would say as well, maybe reach out to your elected government officials and ask them to stand with the Iranian people, ask them to put out statements declaring that the Islamic dictatorship is illegitimate, and recognize that His Royal Highness King Reza Pahlavi, he is the legitimate opposition leader. I think that would go a long way to helping the Iranian people.
What would you want President Trump to be doing right now?
Going after the Islamic dictatorship and blowing them off the face of the earth. That's what I hope that President Trump would be doing right now. Yeah. Just completely destroy them.
Well, that's a very specific directive. I know President Trump watches our broadcast, so he definitely heard that. Goldie, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your heart and your knowledge about this situation, and we will be keeping the people of Iran in our prayers. But thank you for joining us on Jerusalem Dateline.
Thank you so much for having me.